What's up YouTube? This is LDS Reliance. Today I'm going to shoot a video and show you that you can build this farmhouse harvest table. This is a table that someone has asked me to build, so it's, this is the design that they picked out and the colors that they picked out, but this is something pretty easy that you can do. The materials cost under $100 and I think it turned out pretty good. Okay, here's all the materials that we need for the build. We have 4 2x10 by 8-foot pieces. There's one here and 3 here. We have 2 1x4 pieces, and that's also 8 feet long. And then we have 7 2x4 by, they're a little over 8 feet. I think they're 8.5 or roughly. So that's the wood that we need for the project. And here's the materials that we need. We need some pocket hole screws, 2.5 inches long. They don't have to be these blue outdoor type, that's just all they had in stock. We need some 3-inch screws. We need some 2-inch finishing nails. And we'll need some wood filler to be able to, these 2x10s are the tabletop, so we're going to need to fill in some knots and some holes to make it a smooth, flat surface. Okay, so the tools we're going to need a sander, because we're obviously going to need to sand down the surface before staining and painting. We're going to need a nail gun, or I guess if you just want to do it the old-fashioned way, but just be careful not to mar the wood. And then we're going to need a saw. Now I'm going to use a miter saw. You are going to have to cut some 45-degree cuts. This is going to be the easiest tool probably to use for that. So that's what we need to get started. Let's go ahead and start with the first step, which is to cut. I'm going to put the cut list on the screen for you, and we're going to go ahead and cut up this lumber and get started. First I'm going to cut some 2x4s into 20-inch long pieces, and there will be 4 of those. After that, we're going to turn the miter saw to 45 degrees, and then we're going to cut 8 pieces that are 11 3/8 inch along their longest side, and then we're going to cut 45s in. Now when you're cutting these 45s, if you want to not waste any wood, once you make a cut, you'll want to just flip the board over, measure your 11 3/8, and then make another cut. That way you're not, there's no wasted wood, and as minimal cuts as possible. Next we're going to take the 1x4 and cut 4 3.5-inch pieces out. Next thing, we need 4 28-inch pieces from these 1x4s, and that should be all we need from the 1x4s. So 4 different pieces that are 28 inches long. Now we're going to go back to the 2x4s, and we're going to cut 4 pieces that are 34 inches long on their longest measurement, but we're going to cut them at a 45-degree angle horizontal wise instead. Not like this, but cutting them at an angle like that. I'll show you what they look like here in a second. So on these 34-inch cuts, if you have a miter saw like mine where it only tilts one way, I'm going to have to actually measure from the shortest diameter. So basically, to get it to be 34 inches long on the bottom, I need it to be 31 inches long on the top, with a 45 that way and a 45 this way. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. If you measure 31 inches across the top and cut another cut, it should equal 34 on the bottom. After we get the 34s cut, we need to come over here and do 4 pieces also of 31 inches on the long side, which will mean 28 inches on the short side. Okay, we're almost done here. Now we're going to take another 2x4. We're going to cut 2 41-inch pieces out of it, just normal, straight, up and down cuts. The last cuts we're going to make on 2x4s, we're going to cut 4 pieces that are 30 3/8 long, and they're going to be 45 degrees, but they're actually going to be parallel this time. Instead of cutting one this way and one this way, they're actually going to be parallel, so both of them will be 45s this direction. Okay, last but not least, we're going to cut all of our 2x10s to 6 feet in length. Just a normal straight cut, 6 feet long. Alright, now comes the fun part. We're going to start putting this thing together. So we're going to take our 20-inch pieces that we cut, and then we're going to take these 11 3/8 inch pieces with the 45-degree angles on them. And I'm just using these other pieces to create a square to make sure that this is going to be flush and this is going to be flush. And to hold them in place, I'm going to actually screw them from the other side, countersink it, and then screw from that side. But in order to hold them in place, I'm going to go ahead and use a finish nail in both sides, just so that it'll hold it in place. It'll be a lot easier to work with. So here's what it looks like when you're done. We're going to have 4 of these pieces that kind of look like a K. So here's what it looks like, what I mean by countersinking, if you haven't heard that term before. Basically you take a special drill bit like this, and you drill a wide hole here, so that when we put this screw in, it will disappear inside the hole and everything will be smooth and flush on the outside. Alright, now we're going to combine these into 2 units, just like we see here. You're going to put them back to back, and then we're going to use, again, the 2-inch finish nails, just so we don't see a bunch of hardware all over the place. You know, ideally you might want to use screws, but in order to hide this and make it look good, we can use a little bit of wood glue if you have some in between, and then some 2-inch finish nails from either side in there, and that'll be plenty good enough for this purpose. Now we're going to take our 28-inch pieces that we cut out of the 1x4s, and we're going to put one on top here and one on the bottom, and we want them to be centered. So since they're 28 inches, we should be able to measure from the edge to in between these 2 boards right here should be 14 inches. And then you can use, again, you can use wood glue, or you can just use 2-inch finish nails to connect these together, one on top and one on the bottom. Alright, next we're going to grab our 31 and 34-inch pieces that we cut out of miter here. These are 2 pieces, and we're going to take the smaller piece, and we're going to again, you can use wood glue and or 2-inch nails. We just want to hold it in place, and then once we get the bottom piece on, we're going to use 2.5-inch screws to screw down through, and it'll hold it all together. So we just want to kind of tack this in place, the smaller piece, just so it won't move while we're screwing this bigger piece in. Now that I've got this piece tacked on there, I'm going to take the top part, and we want to line up so that the angles match, so we don't have to do too much sanding and jerry-rigging with it afterward. And then once you've got them kind of lined up pretty well, they don't have to be perfect because you can sand down later, but we're going to countersink and drive, I'd say probably 3 or 4 screws, 2.5 inchers down through, and it'll lock all of these pieces in place. And then we're going to do this for all 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to do that on all these corners. Okay, the last thing we need to do on these legs is we need to put the 3.5-inch pieces, these little guys, these are going to be our feet down here underneath. And I can't do it while I'm holding the camera, but the first thing you want to do is figure out which one of these you want to be the top. Now, you're probably going to want one that's a little rougher to be on the top, so you can kind of hide it, because not many people are going to see up underneath the table. But the bottom part, the feet, will be visible. So put the ones that you did the best on the bottom, and then attach the feet underneath. They'll be fine with with finish nails. Just be sure not to poke up through the mitered cut. Okay, now we're going to take our 41-inch pieces, and basically one's going to go on the bottom in between, and the other one goes on the top to connect our 2 feet together. We're going to use pocket hole screws on the underneath side, going from underneath up and in to hide the hole, and then on the top we're going to come from the top and go down. Now if you don't know what a pocket hole jig is, I encourage you to look up what a Craig jig is and purchase one. They're about $30 and they're amazing at hiding holes, so you don't have to drill through and expose your screws to everybody looking at them. Well worth the investment, trust me. Real quickly, for those who haven't seen one being used, this is a Craig jig. You basically you clamp it down, and it has an angled hole and a special drill bit that basically allows you to drill an angled hole through the wood so that your screw will go in, and then it will be hidden inside it's called a pocket hole right here, and then you can plug the hole if you want to. Now our hole is going to be on the bottom, no one's ever going to see it, so I'm not going to bother plugging it. But I just wanted to show, if anyone hadn't seen one being used, that's what it does, is it allows you to drill at an angle. Alright, now we come to the part in every one of my builds where I've made a mistake in my planning, and I've got to make a modification because something didn't quite work out. These pieces that are parallel that we cut, were supposed to go like so. First of all, they're slightly too big, but that's not the main problem. The main problem is that this piece on the bottom is not long enough for these pieces to both coexist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop off 1.25 inches off of the end here, keeping that 45-degree miter, and then I'm going to, instead of having it go parallel over here, I'm going to have it miter back the other direction 45 degrees. That way we'll have a piece that'll go from about the middle over to here and provide some additional, it's called a knee brace, but an additional support for this table. Alright, to attach these I'm going to countersink a 3-inch screw right about there to go down into that, and then I'm going to get up underneath here, countersink one in that way to go into that leg. Okay, now the last step is to put the top boards onto the finished support assembly. So we'll just start on one side and lay them all out. They should go from one edge to the other. Now if you're going to do this for an outdoor table, you probably want to leave a little bit of a gap for water drainage. But most everyone, I'm sure, is probably going to have this as an indoor table, so you want them as tight together as possible. And let's go ahead and lay them out, and we'll get them attached. Okay, so I misspoke a minute ago. It's not going to go to the edge. It's going to come off the edge of the leg about this much on each side. So sorry about that. My apologies. So you want to get it laid out, get it you know, the best way that the wood can behave. You don't want any warped. If it's a little bit warped, you'll have to monkey around with it until it looks pretty good, or flip it over, or put it on the end, or whatever you can do. Once you're happy with that, then you need to take a tape measure and measure into the feet, or the legs, I mean, and then measure this way. Make sure that all of these gaps here and here are equal, and then here and here are equal. And then in order to attach these, we're going to have to countersink some screws and then put some wood putty over top so you can't see them. Okay, here we are. We're done, ready for the finishing stages. What I've done and what you'll want to do is take some wood putty, some wood filler, whatever you want to call it, fill in the knot holes, and also cover up your screw holes from where you attach the table to the legs. Let that dry, 24 hours at least, probably, I would say, and then you want to sand it down really smooth, and get ready for either staining or painting or whatever you want to do. I think I will do a second video on the finishing touches, so let's go ahead and call this good on the first video. Thanks for watching, guys.